You have a situation where you've got a lot of drive-by media. So they will basically smear somebody, put it out there, and then you will debunk it like the next day or whatever, but it's kind of already gotten out there, and there's no recourse effectively if you lie about somebody. And the government should not be involved in this regulating, because you can't regulate speech, but private parties being able to go and say, wait a minute, this was a false statement, you were reckless, or I mean even negligent should be. That's just, we don't have enough of that where there's any accountability. So that's the issue we raise, and it's not much about me, because I do have a platform. I mean, remember, I think 60 Minutes did a hit piece on me, and it was false, and so I was able to go out and fight back doing press conferences and stuff. And you know what? People looked, and they believed I was right. I even had Democrats coming out saying 60 Minutes was off their rocker. But you have other people who do not have the platform that I have, who get targeted. Usually the people get targeted are people that are right of center by some of the entrenched media entities, and they can kind of do it, and these folks don't necessarily have adequate recourse. It's a difficult thing to do that will stick in the courts, but I do think the courts have recognized in the 60s when they did this, it was a much different time. The media ecosystem was way, way different than it is now, and so it was not grounded in the text, history, or structure of the Constitution. Now you look at it and say, okay, it wasn't mandated really. It was a policy choice that the courts made, which they really don't have the authority to do that. But how does that policy hold up now in this fragmented media ecosystem? And so I know they're working on doing things. I have not done or submitted anything personally, and I haven't reviewed anything personally. But these are things just going. For example, and we're going to do an event to really highlight a lot of this. And you've asked about it in the past, and I think have identified that's the flaw in some of this. But they've tried to create in Florida a narrative. It's basically a book ban hoax. It's a hoax what they're doing. And they're trying to say that because we have parental rights and because we have curriculum transparency, if you have a book that has hardcore pornography in a library that 10-year-olds can access, a parent objects to that, that does not satisfy Florida standards. It should not be in the library with those young kids. And I think 99% of parents agree with that. What you will see, and you had a person in Jacksonville say, take a picture of blank bookshelf, say, the state doesn't want any books in the library, and then it ends up going. And then you have lefty media that do it, and then they try to create a narrative. They've also said, you just had on MSNBC, you had the reporter saying that Governor DeSantis does not want students to learn about slavery and its aftermath. Well, if you actually looked at what our standards are, not only is it not prohibited to teach that, it's required to teach that. It's required to teach all of those things. It's required under Florida statutes to teach about racial discrimination. And so they will say, the school had to take a book about Hank Aaron off the shelf because it talks about he faced racial discrimination. And you're thinking like, okay, and why are they doing that? They're doing that to try to create a narrative. They're not doing that because Florida has a law or anything like that. They know that's not in the law, but they're doing it because they know there's enough people in corporate media who will just take that and will run with that. So we've got all these examples cataloged of basically media lies to try to do the hoax. A lot of this has been debunked. The Jacksonville person got fired. There's a teacher in Central Florida that was doing really inappropriate things in terms of what they were putting out online. So that's gone. And so at the end of the day in Florida, if it's explicit and pornographic, parents have the right to object, and it should be taken off. And then in terms of issues involving American history, it's very clear in Florida standards that we are required to teach all aspects of black history, not queer theory, but actual aspects of black history, including MSNBC, slavery and its aftermath, and including and required also to teach about the discrimination. So that is in the law. And so when they're trying to say they have to take a Roberto Clemente book or something like that, they are lying to you. And it's one thing for a stooge who's a partisan apparatchik that may be in like a teacher union to try to do this, but to have corporate media not immediately shoot that down, because all you have to do is look up our standards. Very easy to do. And so it's really just a reckless disregard for what the truth actually is. And the good news about it is, I think because of the lack of guardrails on some of this stuff in terms of being able to do private suits, the standard has gotten lower and lower. The preparation has gotten worse, fact-checking has gotten worse, all that stuff. But what it's done is it's created a situation where the vast majority of the people know that this is an agenda that's trying to be imposed on them. They know these are narratives, and so they don't typically believe it anymore. And I think that a lot of those outlets only have themselves to blame.